when listening to the coverage, number one, Terry Horman restraining order basically is for her not to see her daughter. And if Kyron, in my opinion, if Kyron is found alive, also to not see Kyron, has nothing to do with Terry's older son, who is either living with his grandparents or his biological father, of which the child was left the house in March. Um, there has been no information that came directly from law enforcement regarding the cell phone pings or whether she passed or she didn't pass the polygraph. Everything that's being reported is coming from sources uh, of from law enforcement that they claim not associated to the investigation. You gotta just put that sources in front of everything that they say, because unless you have true facts, you don't know one way or another what is true and what is not true.
Hopefully with someone who is taking care of him, and he's protected and safe. And that's, whether or not that's what actually happened, I can't branch predict every other thing that comes to my mind because I don't want to.
Many find stepmom Terry Horman's behavior on the day of little Kyron's disappearance bizarre, to say the least. She was online blogging about her cat and going to the gym. Here's what one psychoanalyst had to say about it last night on Nancy Grace.
This is reminiscent of Casey Anthony. Remember, the little girl goes missing, she goes to Target, she buys things for herself, she goes out dancing, she's on a stripper pole. Mothers who don't want their children usually try to get rid of the child because they feel the child is standing in the way of the idealized life they want.
Rita Cosby, is that a fair comparison, do you think?
No.
I think it's a really interesting comparison. In fact, that's the first thing I thought of, too, when I heard this case. Just the bizarre behavior. And also the internet, too, is another component. As Mike Brooks was talking about in this case, the stepmom was on the internet. She was on Facebook. We remember those pictures of Casey Anthony all posted all over the place. There's this sort of typical syndrome sometimes. If it turns out that Terry's tied to this, if it turns out, I wouldn't be surprised because the behavior is just so weird and so erratic. And again, it goes back to why is she not telling authorities the truth? If authorities say she's not consistent, and again, if the cell phone records put her somewhere else than she said she was, all of this just opens the door. What are you hiding?
Yeah, and why don't they name, Mike, why don't they name her a person of interest? If all of these reports are valid, why not just take the lead?
Well, there's a lot of things right now that are circumstantial, but one thing you need to have an arrest is probable cause. Now, if you put everything together, some people may say, well, I think they have enough probable cause. But right now, apparently they don't. But there's a reason they're doing this. They just haven't told anyone, and they're holding everything very close to the vest, which, as an investigator, a smart thing to do in this case.
Well, and another thing...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, another thing is they know where she is. They obviously have a very close eye on her. The media has a close eye on her. She's not going anywhere. So if they take the time and are able to build the case, then they can move forward if they decide to move in that direction.
I have no idea. Jane, I have no idea whether she's guilty or not. But let me just say this. There have been many people that Mike Brooks know, that I have defended, that I've prosecuted, who lie but don't necessarily have anything to do for the crime for which they're being attacked on national television. It doesn't mean that they're guilty.
Well, I know you're not referring to Joran Vandersloot.
No. Or Casey Anthony for that matter, but people might be covering up something else. It might be reported that they're lying, but they're not really lying. Maybe they did pass a polygraph, but cops said, well, they were just acting a certain way. Exactly. It doesn't mean they're guilty. I have no idea if she is or she isn't. But let's not convict her just yet.
Let's go back to James Pitkin. He is there. He's a reporter with the Willamette Week. He's on the ground. He's been watching. This is a rather bizarre set of circumstances that has developed, though, the way this has unfolded, James. Is it not? James.
Go out to this school where he disappeared. It is one of the most isolated, tiny rural schools in the area. If I was going to snatch a kid from a school, do a stranger snatching, this is the last place I would pick. I'd pick somewhere in the city, with a lot of traffic around. You just disappear into the cityscape. This place is in the middle of nowhere. That's bizarre.
Now, if the reports from KGW-TV are true and Terry is not cooperating with investigators and not answering questions, could it simply be on her lawyer's advice? Here's last night's issues. Check.
He needs to get control of his client. And if she is sending messages, email messages to the local television station, she's got to obey him to shut up.
Now, Mark Eiglarsh, Terry Horman's attorney, Stephen Howes, is not going to want her to talk to anyone, but she just hired him. I don't believe she had a lawyer until a couple of days ago, so that doesn't explain all her behavior.
That's true, and I'm not necessarily saying that she's innocent. I'm just saying that there are people who look really guilty sometimes and have other reasons to explain that away. I think she needs to keep her mouth shut. She needs to stop sending things out there and just be.
You know, Stacey Kaiser, my theory about this is that this is an enmeshed situation. These two couples are very, very enmeshed. The biological mother got sick. Terry helped her out with little Kyron, ended up marrying Kyron's dad. And so I think there's a lot of codependency issues, a lot of enabling, a lot of lack of boundaries. What say you, Stacey Kaiser, psychotherapist?
I agree with you 100%. And what we see when there's enmeshment and no boundaries and sort of this blurred line of who's doing what role in a family, we see some people getting angry and acting out. Now, most people don't go and take a child or do anything to them, but it certainly is possible if somebody has the right psychological makeup, which is meaning that she has psychological problems. And if she does, she may have done something.
Well, you know, it's a tough position for her to be in. Again, we want to stress that she is not a suspect or a person of interest, but clearly she is the focus of the investigation. And imagine what she feels like right now, sitting there with the entire nation's laser beam focused on her. Thank you, fantastic panel. Coming up, the latest on the search for Haley Cummings.